Good morning, Chair Peterson. My name is Adrian Diaz. I am currently the Assistant Chief of the Collaborative Policing Bureau for the Seattle Police Department. I'm here to speak to Senate Bill 6288, which would establish the Office of Firearm Violence Prevention. I've served in law enforcement for 23 years and spent much of that time building relationships across all of Seattle's diverse communities and leading youth violence prevention initiatives in the city after a multitude of homicides affecting our youth under the age of 18. I've seen firsthand the toll gun violence takes on our communities every day. In Seattle, across our state, the burden of gun violence falls disproportionately on our Black and brown communities. In Washington state, 20% of the state's gun violence victims are Black. However, only 4% of the state's population is Black. Similarly, Latinx residents make up 12% of the state's population, but represent 24% of the state's gun homicide victims. In 2019, Seattle alone experienced 332 shootings. It's almost one a day. And 97 resulted in injury or death. This proposal would take an important first step towards prioritizing and addressing the type of gun violence that is hurting our communities every day by creating the Office of Firearm Violence Prevention. This office would not only identify gaps in data and develop policy options, but it would also work with the Office of Crime Victim Advocacy to better support victims of gun violence and administer a grant program to support community-based violence prevention and intervention programs. Through my violence prevention work in Seattle, I've seen how effective holistic and community-based programs can be in reducing violence. Research on similar programs in cities like Oakland and Milwaukee and New York have found the same to be true. Empowering the communities that know what the crisis looks like best will help them lead the fight against gun violence. It'll make our community safer. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. I am Evan Cook, and I am here to speak in support of Senate Bill 6288. I currently serve as an outreach coordinator with the Federal Way Youth Action Team. I have seen the impact of gun violence firsthand on TV and music, as a youth growing up in the tough streets of Oklahoma City, as a student in high school when cops pulled me out of a car at gunpoint for a reason not given, in college, when I was in law enforcement as a police officer, and now almost weekly as a community worker that has seen far too many youth killed in the past 4 years. Nationwide, community gun violence kills more Black men than 9 other top causes of death combined. And I am not talking about Black on Black crime, let's be clear. We have been shot at by everybody. Recently, the gun violence that takes place in South King County, or my city, Federal Way, has just recently started to make headlines. Very few of our elected officials had picked up this issue, but I would be remiss not to highlight recently appointed State Rep Jesse Johnson for his work in the Federal Way area with the Federal Youth Action Team around this issue. It is time we start this change on all levels so parents can attend their children's graduations again and not their funerals. No parent should have to bury their child. No kid should have to watch their friend go into the ground a week before their senior prom, but this is an unfortunate reality for a lot of youth. Senate Bill 6288 will create an Office of Firearm Violence Prevention. This office should help us better understand the causes and effects and help us implement solutions to gun violence in communities like mine. But more importantly, this office would help support the victims as well as their families and friends, because gun violence impacts everyone in the community, and it will take everyone in the community to stop it. Senate Bill 6288 would establish a grant program to support community-based programs like mine, the Federal Youth Action Team, and many of us that have been doing gun violence prevention work for years with little to no support. In closing, I am not advocating for the removal of guns from American citizens. I am a firm believer in our Second Amendment right, and it is my hope that we not put the guns down, but teach the forgotten lessons of our founding fathers to use those guns to protect ourselves and our fundamental rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please proceed.
Good morning. My name is Darrell Green. I'm here representing myself and my organization, Choose 180. We're a restorative practice organization based in King County, particularly in Seattle. I have multiple people on my caseload that have been shot. My coworker currently is dealing with the death of a child that was on his caseload. We live in the same community where this disproportionality of gun violence is taking place. And I appreciate that we're here talking about this bill, not in a reactionary mode to a school shooting or something that's happening. We're being proactive with this. Our core values as an organization are seen all throughout this bill. We support this very strongly. We know that sometimes legislation can be written with purposeful intent, sometimes to hurt those that are disproportionately affected by law already. But this one has been purposely written with the people most affected in mind. We need to support more legislation like this in our country, period. Some of this language in here is so powerful at the end, talking about reducing the gun violence in the applicant's community, but without contributing to mass incarceration. That's so vital, because the answer is not to lock up our 14-year-old children that don't feel safe even going to school without a firearm. I also love the fact that this has terminology in here when it's coming to the advisory committee. I also serve on the Washington Statewide Reentry Council. And I serve on that council because I have personal lived experience, and it's shown fact that we are allowing the communities, the people that are experts with the situations, to have a say at the table on the highest level, that is effective. So we are fully supporting this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Dan Carew, and I'm Senior Deputy Prosecuting Attorney at the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. I'm a member of our Crime Strategies Unit and worked exclusively on the firearm violence and the Shots Fired project that was referenced earlier. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. I'm here in support of Senate Bill 6288 and know that my elected official is also in support. I want to start by acknowledging that while gun violence is often talked about as if it's a single problem, it's really at least 4 different ones: suicides, urban gun violence, domestic violence, and mass shootings. And while there are some relationships between these 4 types of gun violence, they're each different and each requires different policies to address them. The bill that's in front of you today focuses primarily on urban gun violence, the daily shooting incidents that take place on our city streets, most frequently in underserved communities of color, and for which the victims are overwhelmingly young men. To give you a sense of the problem, in 2019, in King County alone, 49 people were killed by firearms, and at least an additional 206 people were shot but survived their injuries, many with significant and lasting physical and/or mental health conditions. Of those over 250 shooting victims, 89% were male, 80% were people of color, and 47% were under the age of 25. While these shootings impose a tremendous physical, emotional, and financial toll, the promising news is that there's a growing body of public health research that has shown that targeted and sustained investments in community-based violence intervention strategies are effective at interrupting cycles of violence, promoting community safety, and saving lives. By creating the Office of Firearm Violence Prevention and the Firearm Violence Prevention Grant Program, this bill will allow Washington to follow the lead of states like New York, Massachusetts, and California that have adopted similar programs and have seen their rates of firearm violence plummet as a result. In those states, local gun violence prevention strategies are coordinated at the state level and supported by sustained funding. The strategies are informed by reliable data and focus on the small set of people and places where firearm violence concentrates. By investing in programs that target the small number of individuals at the highest risk of perpetrating gun violence, cities in these states have demonstrated that significant progress can be made in a short amount of time and with a significant return on investment. As you've heard today, there are many organizations in Washington that are committed to working to reduce urban gun violence. This bill is an opportunity to make sure that there is a mechanism in place to ensure that these community-based organizations are funded at consistent levels so their hard-fought progress is not jeopardized and the lives of some of our community's most vulnerable residents are not further endangered. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do members of the committee have questions for this?